couple of weeks back, we talked in depth about the Port City Economic Commission bill. We made a podcast segment about it, and we also posted a blog post which you can check out from our podcast description. There will be a link below. But that was before this bill became law. And during our segment and in our blog post, we made some comments about it. We talked about its implications to our country and our economy. But since then, the bill's gone through the Supreme Court and there's been some changes made to it. Just to recap quickly, the Supreme Court decided that about 25 sentences were unconstitutional or contradictory, and that the government needed to make multiple amendments to the bill if they wanted to pass this bill without a referendum and a supermajority in the parliament. So essentially, what that means is people were right to criticize it. They were right to take it to court, to question its validity, and we have to appreciate the effort. On the other hand, people who supported this bill needs to take a hard look at themselves, need to question where their interests lie in and why they wanted to make this law. For all the talk about being patriotic, there's a lot of sucking China's in this bill, which is a bit hypocritical, which is a bit ironic. Before we dig deep into this bill and what the Supreme Court had to say about this bill, we need to acknowledge that China is a superpower. They've got a lot of say in what Sri Lanka does, regardless of which party's in power. They have a lot of leverage, especially when it comes to our foreign relations. We have their backing, usually, in the Security Council and the Human Rights Council. We do have that assurance. So even if we weren't in debt to China, they could always say that they're not going to support us anymore in the Human Rights Council if they were to bring resolution against us, which makes it harder for any government to go against China. Like we said, we need to acknowledge that. Even then, right? It's all part of the port city, the Hambantota Harbour, and China's other development projects in Africa, in other Asian countries. All of this, it's there to further China's agenda. It's there to further Beijing's agenda. It's not part of Sri Lanka's agenda. Sure, there are benefits to it. It'll pump some money into the Lankan economy. It'll bring foreign currency, but the bigger picture is, for China, something like Port City is their, I guess, token of authority over Sri Lanka. China's trying to make friends. It's not a secret that they're in a competition against America to be the world's superpower. So to that end, to win that race, they need friends. And the easiest way to make friends is through economic developments. And part of that is giving out loans and creating projects like Port City. That's China's agenda, to give us money, give us projects, give us job opportunities that in the long run is going to benefit China. In the long run is going to benefit Chinese government. That's why we think they wanted an autonomous body commission to have all the lawmaking powers instead of putting the port city under the supervision of Colombo Council or like a Port City Municipal Council or something like that. Because if it was under the purview of Colombo Municipal Council or a Colombo Port City Council, that would help us, because the Sri Lankan government and the Western Province Council will have more say over what's going to happen in the port city, who's going to get what, how is the money spent. But with an autonomous body, China can have their way without much challenge, because as it was, the bill didn't have any I guess, conditions about who can be on the commission. Do they have to be Sri Lankans? Can they be other nationals? Do they have to be? Can they be dual citizens on the board? So things like that. That's why we keep saying that this is not part of Sri Lanka's economic plan. Even if it does help our economy, does it compensate our country enough for the cost and the labor we've spent trying to build it? That's why we think it's important to recognize that fact. Now that we got it out of the way, we need to look at what amendments were made to the Port City Bill, because there were a lot of them, starting from the beginning. Clauses 3 bracket 6, 30 brackets 3, 55 brackets 2, and 58 brackets 1 allowed the Commission to essentially act on behalf of other authorities. What that means is, we talked in depth about it in our last podcast about the Port City. The Port City can enact laws that are the responsibility of other authorities. For example, let's say Central Environmental Authority, right? There are a set of laws. They have an act that provide them a certain amount of power. Under this new bill, Port City Commission has the power to act on behalf of the Central Environmental Authority inside Port City area. Supreme Court found that this was unconstitutional because the acts themselves were supposed to only give powers to the authorities in question, right? When an act gives the Central Environmental Authority a certain amount of power, it can only be used by that authority. It can't be transferred like they're trying to do in the Port City Commission bill. So that was changed after it was passed in the Parliament. The way it works now is that the Economic Commission can only communicate their suggestions to whatever board they need to ask permission from. So say again, for the Central Environmental Authority, if they wanted to do something that falls under the Central Environmental Authority's purview, the Commission has to then go to the authority, get their permission, and after they do that, they can ask the Central Environmental Authority to do whatever is necessary inside Port City. Right? That's part one of what's changed. Part two was that the Port City Commission was given powers that are vested in the Director General of Customs, the Director General of Inland Revenues, in clauses 3 brackets 5, 6 brackets 1, and 30 brackets 3, and clause 74. Right? Supreme Court said that the Port Commission is a regulatory commission, so their job is to regulate. But contrary to that, the bill also gave them some powers to decide what can be taxed, what can't be taxed. So essentially, the Director General of Customs and the Director General of Inland Revenues were powerless. Their office wasn't valid inside the Port Authority. On a hypothetical level, because the commission's too arbitrary, because their responsibilities and their duties lacked clarity, they could stretch their responsibilities, their duties, to go beyond what was mentioned in the Act, which means that the government had to change those clauses that I mentioned before too. After it was passed in the Parliament, the Commission's now acting as a regulatory commission rather than a all-powerful, all-seeing body. That's part two. Part three is that in the bill, clause 71 brackets 2 said that the president and the minister make the development control regulations, and in turn they're going to be responsible to the Parliament. But on the same bill, in clause 3 brackets 4 and 6 brackets 1, the bill says that the commission itself is responsible for making development control regulations, and so there's a clear contradiction between what's said in clause 71 and what's being said in clause 3 and 6, which means the government had to remove clause 3 and 6. As it stands now, clause 71 is the valid law, I guess. President or the minister in charge of Port City is responsible for making development control regulations. The idea is that if it's the minister or the president, they have some responsibility to the parliament. But if the commission was going to make these development control regulations, they're not responsible to the parliament, so they can do whatever they want, which is a big question with the nationality of board members coming into question. And then Supreme Court also found that clauses 52 brackets 3 and 52 brackets 5 are also unconstitutional because they allow the commission to almost ignore parliament's power of control over all fiscal matters, right? I think this was discussed in detail in the Port City Bill debate. The reason parliament has control over financial matters is because there are 24 million people in Sri Lanka. All 24 million of them can't control the economy. It's going to be a mess. That's why people elect 225 people to act on their behalf and do what they think is best for the country. That includes handling people's money, taxes, tax exemptions, samruddhi, government authorities, constructions, everything. Because this is people's money we are talking about, people's taxes. So it needs to be monitored properly, needs to be handled properly by a responsible institution, which is in our case the parliament. But like we said, the Port City Commission bill gave unprecedented powers to the commission to do whatever they like with the money that they get, with the investments that they get. So in the end, the government had to agree to allow the parliament to monitor financial handlings of the commission. But if you look at some of the speeches that the opposition party made over the last few days, you'll notice that speaker didn't actually mention whether the Corp Commission or the Corpa Commission can or cannot bring the Port City Commission into question, right? Corp Commission was a huge deal in the past few years. We saw a lot of government organizations being called to the parliament, which included the Central Bank, Sri Lankan Cricket Board, Transportation Board, Sri Lankan Airlines. And it was because of the Corp Commission that we found out about the bond scams. If the Port City Commission isn't answerable to the Corp Council, that means potentially they could get away with something like the bond scam. So who's going to be responsible then, right? Who's going to investigate the loss of people's money? Because that was one of the biggest reasons the last government lost. They weren't handling the country's finances properly. So that's part 4. Moving on to part 5, clause 53 brackets 2 and 53 brackets 3 allows the cabinet minister, on the recommendation of the commission, to exempt laws for the commission, right? Which is also unconstitutional. That means the cabinet minister in charge of Port City can exempt the commission and the Port City area from laws that the council sees fit. If the council doesn't want to protect coastal laws, according to these clauses, so clause 53 brackets 2 and 53 brackets 3, they could ask the cabinet minister to exempt Port City from all coastal laws. That means Port City Commission and the businesses in Port City can do whatever they want with the coastal area. And that's just one hypothetical example. The implications are really bad, really dangerous. This sends the message that we are so desperate for foreign investments. Sri Lanka's ready to allow any business to do whatever they want as long as they bring us some money, even if it's illegal. Just like the other clauses, the other articles of this bill, clause 53 brackets 2 and 53 brackets 3 had to be changed to be in line with the constitution. Moving on to clauses 30 brackets 1 and 33 brackets 1, according to the Supreme Court, those clauses meant that a Sri Lankan citizen needed to seek prior approval from the Port City Commission before visiting it, right? And this is not just me saying it. I think we mentioned it in our last segment about the Port City as well. This is a clear violation of our freedom of movement, which is one of our fundamental rights to move anywhere within the country, to live anywhere within the country is one of our fundamental rights. Upul Shanta Sanaskala did a video recently about this. What he said was that in reality, none of us are really free to move anywhere. He was saying that if we take peak of Pidurtharagala mountain, where Sri Lanka Rupani has their tower, legally, even if we have freedom of movement, the peak of Pidurtharagala is owned by Maharaja. So technically, people can't actually enter that property because it's the property of a private company, private institution. That's just one example. He was saying there are nightclubs like that, there are hotels like that. You need a certain amount of money or a certain amount of power to get into those places, or a certain amount of popularity to get into those places, right? That's sort of the gist of what he was saying. But even though that's true, right, there are beaches that we can't go to, there are mountaintops that we can't go to, there are forest areas that we can't go to, there are buildings, hotels, because either they're important to national security, because they're private property, or we're too poor, right? One of those reasons. The question is, do we need to add another item to that list? If we can't go to the peak of Pidurtharagala mountain, if we can't go to, Taj Samudra, or, whatever the nightclub Upulshanta wanted to get into, whatever, right? So there's a huge list of places that the average Lankan can't get into. If that's the case, why do we need to add another place to that list? If we keep adding to that list, if we sell Port City to China, if we sell or lease Hambantara to China, if we lease, I don't know, Anuradhapura to America or whatever, where do we have left? Where do the people go to? Where do the average citizen who pay taxes go to? Because it's the people's money. It's the people's debt. If the average citizen pay for it, they shouldn't have restrictions as to where they can go and where they can't go. Simple as that. That was the argument put before the court, which the Supreme Court agreed to. In the end, the government had to change that. So don't worry. Once they finish Port City, you won't have to seek permission from the commission. You can drive there whenever you want and do some window shopping and come back. Think about what you can't buy. But yeah, that's a whole nother story. What we went over was just the unconstitutional ones. All those clauses that I read out, those are just the unconstitutional ones. They were contradicting laws. They were constitutional, but laws that were in contradiction with other acts, right? So things like that. All in all, this bill was a mess, but regardless, it managed to pass, I guess. But overall, going back to what we were saying earlier, anyone who read the list of suggestions made by the Supreme Court can't in good conscience agree that this commission is good for our economy. Port City, maybe, it'll be a good chance to bring in foreign investments, but the commission itself won't do any good. Yes, we need foreign investments. That's sort of the only way going forward. If we are not interested in doing research and development, we need foreign investments to boost our economy, give people jobs, pump some money into the economy. But really, with this bill, the government's relying completely on indirect income. All companies are tax exempted. There's no income tax. There's no capital tax. So there's no VAT, value added tax, and value added tax, income tax, tax overall are the only direct method that we can make some money out of this whole situation, this whole mess. But as it stands now, the government is really thinking of two ways that the port city is going to work. One, they think whatever foreign businesses that are going to open in port city are going to hire Sri Lankans who are going to be paid in foreign currency, who are going to put that in banks, use that money outside of port city, boost our economy that way, right? Indirectly. And that's part one of their plan. Part two, we feel like they expect foreign businesses to collaborate with businesses outside port city, so businesses in Lanka, which is also going to bring us some money. But realistically, how likely are those two things to happen? We're putting a lot of faith on capitalism. How viable is it long term? Not trying to go full JVP here, but we have gambled way too much of our money. We've gone way too much into debt just to rely on the goodwill of international corporations to do the right thing. ඉතින් ඒ විදිහට අදට අපි අපේ පොඩ්කාස්ට් එකේ 58 වෙනි කොටස අවසන් කරනවා. නැවතත් පොඩ්කාස්ට් එකේ 59 වෙනි කොටසෙන් හමු වෙනකම් හැමෝටම ආයුබෝවන්.